Thank you so much for joining. I'll just say something quickly and then the Rosh Yeshiva will take over. Is that okay? Okay. There is a Gemara in Sukkah, Daf Chav Ches Amud Beis, that I've heard Rav Weiss quote a number of times. The Gemara there describes the Shmonim Talmidim Hayu lo leHillel HaZaken. Hillel HaZaken had 80 Talmidim. Gadol Shebakulam Rav Yonasan ben Uziel. He was the greatest of the Talmidim. Katan Shebakulan Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai. And then the Gemara describes Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai's knowledge as including Mikra and Mishnah and Halachos and Agados and Dikdukei Torah and Sichos Shel Malachei Asharis, everything. And the Gemara says, well, if he was the least of the Talmidim and he knew all of those things, what made Rabbi Yonasan ben Uziel better than him? And the Gemara then says, and it's famous, because Rabbi Yonasan ben Uziel, b'sha'ah sheyosheva osek b'Torah, when he sat and learned Torah, kol of sheporeach alav miyad nisraf. Birds who flew over his head were incinerated by the intensity of his Talmud Torah. And asked the Minchas Asher, wait, if that was the least of the Talmidim, and then Rabbi Yonasan ben Uziel was the greatest of the Talmidim, what was greater about Hillel HaZaken? And the Minchas Asher answered as follows. He said the greatness of Hillel HaZaken was that when he learned Torah, birds did not get incinerated over his head. His Torah was not terrifying, it was not frightening, it was not destructive. His Torah was warm and inviting and unifying and caring and compassionate. And Re'uyim Hadvarim Lemisha Amaran, Rav Asher Weiss's Torah is all of those things and more. It's warm and inviting and compassionate and caring, and it makes you want to be closer to him, and it inspires you. And it brings all the parts of Judaism together. To go to his shiur is to see one of the only places in the land of Israel where Charedim and Hasidim and Litvisher and Dati Le'umi and Hilltop Youth and people in Madim all get together to hear his Torah. My family and I have been privileged for many years to have a relationship with Rav Weiss, and as much as possible, I love for the talmidim and our yeshiva to have a relationship, and the yeshiva itself. Rav Weiss has been to our yeshiva before. We have been to him this year before Slichos. It's a huge kavod and honor to all of us to welcome Rav Weiss and hear his divrei chizuk.
So it's a privilege and a simcha and an honor for me to be together with you all tonight. I love Eli Weber. I call him Eli because that is how I know him for so many years. To me, it's just an inspiration. It should be for all of you, a person like Rav Weber, who left a very successful career in America. Eli, don't get angry with me, please. You know, I forgive you for what you said about me, so you got to forgive me for what I say about you. And he left all the riches of America and a very lucrative career to love the land.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Harav, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the things I said about you were actually true.
Eli, let's spare our beloved talmidim this argument. So anyway, it's a pleasure to be with you, and I love your Rebbe, Reb Eli Weber, without saying anything more. And this is my duty and my mission, as Eli mentioned, to bring people together in the love of Torah. So we are living in very difficult times, in very tragic times. I would very much prefer being together with you physically, either in the yeshiva or in my base medrash. But this is Gzera Shamayim, and it is not to be. We need to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we could harness and take advantage of modern technology to enhance Talmud Torah. So there's an amazing Gemara in Avodah Zarah Daf Gimel, and the Gemara speaks about the days to come, at the end of days, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu will judge all the nations. And the Gemara says the first ones to be judged will be the Romans, and then the Greeks, dealing with the great empires of yore, the Roman Empire, the Greeks, and their equivalent in today's world. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu will judge the Romans. What have you done in this world? And they will say, we built roads and bridges and huge monuments and amphitheaters and colosseums. And whatever we did for the people of Israel. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu will say, Shoitem shebiyolam. Whatever you did for yourself, not for my children, not for my people. And one wonders, La'asad lavoi, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu will appear for the world in all his glory and majesty, and everybody will see Kvod Shamayim Be'idgalia. How would they dare to lie? How could one lie in the face of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Shoitem shebiyolam, kol ma she'asisem letzorech atzmechem asitem. Why does he say Shoitem shebiyolam and he doesn't say Shakronim, Kazvonim, liars, how do you dare? So my understanding is this. At the end of days, ultimately, yes, it'll all be for Israel. In the great amphitheaters and the sports arenas and the stadiums, everything will be for Lamdei Torah. Because everybody will learn Torah. V'malach ha'oretz de'us Hashem. Oz ahafrechel kol ha'amim. Likroi b'shem Hashem u'la'avdoi shechem echad. So the Romans will say, Rabbeinu Shalom, look, everything we did is for Israel. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu will say, yes, but Shoitem shebiyolam, that was not your intention. And I will judge you with your intentions. What you see now is my master plan. It's not your doing, it is mine. So the Romans will look around and they will see all those monuments and buildings and rows, and everything is for the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they will think, so why do we deserve punishment? Kol ma she'osinu b'shvil Yisrael osinu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will say, Shoitem shebiyolam. What you did was for yourself. So modern technology is a challenge, a huge challenge for our efforts in educating our children to Kedusha, to Tahara, to Torah. But when we look around today and we say, Kol ma she'asisem b'shvil Yisrael asisem, and we are taking advantage of this very technology to enhance Talmud Torah, to bring people together, to teach, to learn. So, Baruch Hashem, we need to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it's hard to imagine how in this period we would see our beloved talmidim and teach them and learn together with them, if not for this modern technology. So, Baruch Hashem, it's a schus and a privilege for me to see you and to hear you and to be able to teach Torah in this way. So we are living in a very difficult time, in a time of extreme challenge and pain. We've lost so many wonderful people to this plague, to this COVID-19. And I myself have lost very, very precious friends just in the last few days. Dr. Shalom Bookbinder from Teaneck, New Jersey, passed away. What a wonderful person. He and his wife are both doctors. His 3 sons are my talmidim. And it's such a terrible loss and so painful. So, and many people ask, what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want? He definitely wants something. And the Gemara in Yevamah Samach Gimel says, Ein paron es bo li'olam, elo b'shvil Yisrael. Whatever tragedy strikes the world is for us. So this is a global pandemic. Doesn't affect us exclusively. It affects everyone. And I doubt whether ever in history we knew anything similar to this, We knew tragic wars of huge destruction, World War I, World War II. We knew huge epidemics, the Black Death 600 years ago in Europe, the Spanish flu just 100 years ago in various different continents. But I don't know whether there ever was a global pandemic that affected every continent, every country. And it's a frightening time, but nevertheless, Chazal teach us, Ein paronas boli olam elo b'shvil Yisrael. To me, it goes without saying that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was talking to mankind in general as well. And I spoke at another shmuz about what I think is the message. What is HaKadosh Baruch Hu conveying? But in Yevamis Samach Gimel Tav, the Gemara teaches us, it is primarily about us because we are the chosen people. We are the chosen people. So some people in the modern world have difficulty with this concept. We are the chosen people. But in Torah, in Avim, in Ksuvim, Torah Shebachsav and Torah Shebakpeh, that is one of the most fundamental ideas and axioms of Yiddishkeit. But to be a chosen people is not only a privilege, it is a huge responsibility. Yes, we are Avdei Hashem. We are Bonov Shel Elokeinu. And at the third Perek of Masechet Avos, Rabbi Kiva ben Yosef, arguably maybe the greatest Tana, definitely one of the greatest. And he says, Chavav Odom Shenivro B'Tzelem, Chibi Yasera Noidas Leila Odom Shenivro B'Tzelem Elokim. And then he goes on, Chavivin Yisrael Shenikru Bonim L'Makoim, Chibi Yasera Noidas Li Yisrael Shenikru Bonim L'Makoim. And he goes on, Chavivin Yisrael Shenitan Lehem Klei Chemdo, Chibi Yasera Noidas Lehem Li Yisrael Shenitan Lehem Klei Chemdo. And all the major commentators on Mishnah, excluding Reb Chaim Vital, quoted by his Talmud, the Medrash Shmuel. But all the others say the Mishnah differentiates between humankind, every human being, and Klal Yisrael. Every human being, regardless of race, color, gender, emunah, they were all Nivra B'Tzelem Elokim, and all have basic dignity. Chavav Odom Shenivra B'Tzelem. But we, the Jewish people, stand apart. With what do we stand apart? We are family. Shenikro Bonim L'Mokom. We are the only ones that stood at Har Sinai. So all the others have 7 mitzvahs, Sheva mitzvahs bnei Noach. Sheva mitzvahs bnei Noach boil down to just be a mensch, just be a decent human being. Don't rob, don't kill, don't lie, don't steal. We have not 7, 613 Taryag mitzvahs that dictate machshava, dibur, v'maisa. A Jew never has one free moment of his life. It's not only about what you do, it's about what you say, and it's not only about what you talk, it's about what you think and what you feel. So to be a chosen people is not only a privilege, it is first and foremost an awesome responsibility and a duty. And because we are the chosen people, what happens in the world is about the world, but it is primarily about us. So, what does the Kodesh Baruch Hu want from us? Loi novi ani v'lo ben novi. The Rambam makes it very clear in Hilchos Taniyos that when any tragedy strikes the tzibur, not the individual, it comes to convey a message. And the Kodesh Baruch Hu is calling out to us, and he says, you gotta be better. You gotta do tshuva. So since the outbreak of this plague, of this pandemic, everybody's talking about isolation, bidud, social distancing. And, you know, I felt it is as if HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us, I've been trying to talk to you for a while, but you never have time. You never have time for me. You ain't listening. I can't connect. You know, I've been calling and you're not returning my calls. You don't answer. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, first of all, put us all into isolation. Maybe now, you're not rushing anywhere. You're sitting each and every one of you in your home, in your private domain. Maybe finally we could have a conversation. Maybe finally you try to listen. You know, I've been trying to talk to you. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is talking to us. And that is what the Rambam teaches at the beginning of Hilchos Taniyos. What exactly is this message? I admit I don't know. And I doubt anyone does. I am generally hostile to people that claim always to know exactly what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. Since prophets no longer walk the land, we don't know exactly. So what is our obligation if we don't know exactly what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants? Our basic obligation is to do tshuva and to do a cheshbon nefesh and to be better. And no one knows better than the person himself how, where, and in what he needs to be better. People prefer to doing the cheshbon nefesh of others and pointing to others and say, you got to fix this and you got to fix that. But in reality, each and every one of us should know what he is lacking, whether it's in Torah or in Tefillah or in Kedusha, in Shmiras Einayim. There are so many ways in which we can be better. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu definitely is calling out to us, I want you to be better. But I think it's also legitimate to try to guess. As long as the message is not a negative message to hurt others, as long as the result would be to be better, I think it is legitimate to try to apply some common sense and try to guess what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. So I want to share with you some basic feelings that I have just in my heart in these days and this week, since we are in this strange type of existence. Shuls are closed, yeshivas are closed. Most of us are davening the yechidus. And I've been shouting and yelling and preaching and convincing and talking for weeks about the importance of Benishmat Moed Lenashei Seichem, which overrides any other consideration. Don't leave your homes. Lech ami boi v'chadorechos gored losecho ba'adecho. So what is the message? The Novi Yeshayahu, Perik Chavtes posek Yud Gimel, complains. And that's a very powerful posek and a very well-known one. Vayomer Hashem yan ki nigashu am hazeh befiv ubesvosov kibduni v'liboy rochak mimeni v'tehi yorosam oisi mitzvas anoshem milumodo. It's not coming from your heart. Yes, you go through the acts, you say what you need to say, bepivo besvosov kibduni, but his heart is far from me. And their awe of HaKadosh Baruch Hu was just out of routine. Mitzvahs anoshem melumodo. Rabbi Isaac Shter was the great Rosh Yeshiva of Slobodka. And he was a very original thinker and very outspoken. And he once said, Boyo v'nachzik toivol mitzvahs anoshem melumodo. How would we be if not for mitzvat anashim melumod? If we wouldn't go to shul 3 times a day to daven, out of routine, if we wouldn't put on tefillin only when we feel the passion of Yichud Shemaya Godol, of Kabbalah Sol Malchus Shemayim, if not for our routine, since we're little kids, we know you need to go to shul to daven. You need to put on tefillin every day. There's a certain pattern. There are certain rules which you follow, whether you're up to it or not. Whether you're up to it or not. That's what kept us going for thousands of years. Yes, it is exactly the mitzvahs anoshem elamodo. So we have abused Mitzvahs Anoshim Alamoda for all these years. Let's appreciate Mitzvahs Anoshim Alamoda. I think that's a very powerful statement. It is not our Mish'alat Lev. No, it's not really what we strive for. Yes, many times they say the shleimus of a Yid is the combination between passion and compassion. Passion ben odem lamokam and compassion ben odem lachaverei. Yes, our avodas Hashem should be passionate. It should come from deep conviction and feeling and emotion. But we're human. We're human. And Tardemata Hergel is one of the most powerful forces in human nature. So yes, our routine is what keeps us going. It's so important. But maybe this time HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I want to examine each and every one of you as an individual, not as part of the collective, not as part of the herd or the pack or the clan. I want to connect to you as individuals. Not rushing to shul 3 times a day. Nobody is checking you whether you said Kriya Shema Bismana. Nobody knows whether Shachas took you 10 minutes or an hour. Let us have a talk on a very individual and personal basis. And our challenge in these days is to sanctify our homes. So Megillah Daf Chav Tes, the Gemara interprets a posek of the Navi. I think it's the Navi Yechezkel. Ve'ehi lohem lemigdash ma'at v'kol hamakom asher yavoyu shamo. I will be to them a lesser sanctuary, a migdash ma'at, wherever they go. And the Gemara says, Elo bote knesis bote medroshes shebebavel. And the Kedushas Levi, the Tzaddik of Barditchev says, it's not only bote knesis and medroshes, every Jewish home. Every Jewish home dedicated to Torah, to Avodah, to Chesed is a migdash ma'at. An amazing Rashi, Shabbos Nun Hayomud Beis. Ad shelo nivna oyel moyed, hoisu ashchina shoyre ba'ohalei tzadikim. And I think after Chor Mabayis, the Shechina didn't pack up and go up to the heavens. The Shechina nodedet memakom lemakom. From Bote Knesses to Bote Midrashes and from Bote Midrashes to Ohalei tzadikim. Our shuls are closed, our yeshivas are closed. But we need to sanctify our homes. Every living room should be a Beis Medrash. Every study should be a Beis Knesses. Every Jewish home should be a Migdash Ma'at. And every Jew, Atem Tiori Mamleches Koyanim V'Goy Kodosh. Every home should be sanctified. So, I don't see many of you, but I see some of you. So look at Rebbe Weber and the background behind his chair, a huge Sforim Shafra. And I see some others sitting in their studies with all those Sifrei Kodesh. Every Jewish home needs to be a Beis Medrash. And every one of us is a Rosh Hashiva these days. He is his own Rosh Hashiva, sitting at home. You have time. You have time. Utilize that time. Take advantage of every moment because we need your tefillas and we need your Torah. So I'm sharing with you a thought I said many times in the past 2 weeks. Maybe some of you heard it, but it's always kedai to hear again. So Shabbos Chol Hamoed Pesach, we read Shir HaShirim. And Rebbe Kiva, the second time I'm quoting Rebbe Kiva tonight. Kol HaMegillas Kodesh, Shir HaShirim Kodesh Kodesh. Shir HaShirim is a love story between the Doid and the Raya. What is it about? So the Rambam Perek Yud Hilchos Shuvah says Shir HaShirim is a mashal. It's a love story between the Dod and the Raya, between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and us and Knesset Yisrael. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Doid and we are the Raya. 2 lovers desperately looking for each other. And the Seforno, in his introduction, says this shir is especially relevant in Golus. So the Raya looks for the Doid, and she's desperate. She's devastated. And she thinks, has he left me? Has he gone elsewhere? Did he find a new love? And she runs around looking for him. And the posek says he went nowhere. He wants no one but you. He cares only about you and about no one else. And then she cries out, so why? Why is he hiding? Why doesn't he throw open the door and show me his face? And he says, Hashmi'ini es koilech, ki koilech orev. I want to hear your voice. And the Seforno says, Kodesh Baruch Hu Keilu is pleading with us, daven, learn. I want to hear your voice, and I'm not hearing it clear enough. So I know we're a generation, we think we're super. And many times we hear from Arash Yeshivas, there never was a generation that learned so much Torah as we do. I don't agree. I don't think we're that great. If we would be that great, then Mashiach would be here. And if he's not here, that means we are found lacking. So we're obviously not as great as we think we are. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu expects us to be far better. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is playing Hashmi'ini es koilech. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with us. His Rachamim are with us. Hashmi'ini es koilech. So when you listen to a choir, it's the most beautiful music. When many voices harmonize, and you hear the beautiful harmony of them all. So when you listen to an orchestra playing a symphony, sometimes the beauty is just unbelievable. But you could never appreciate the voice of an individual chazan or a singer unless he sings solo. And when you listen to an orchestra, you're witnessing the magic, the genius of the conductor. But the Yitzhak Perelman or the Yasha Chayfetz or the Lenny Bernstein or whoever it is, the great violinists, you can't appreciate their greatness unless you hear them solo. So usually we daven with a choir, and that's the most beautiful music. And the Rambam writes, Perek Ches Aloha Aleph B'Hilchos Tefillah. Tefillah Satziba Le'olam Nishmat, Af al pi sheyesh behem chatoim. Eina Kodesh Baruch Hu mo'es Tfilat HaRabim. That's singing with the choir. Because when the choir sings, it's not Pliny and Almoini and Palmoini. It's not Mr. A and Mr. B. It's the choir. It's the orchestra. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves that music. That's Tfilas HaTzibur. But right now, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Hashmi'ini es koilech. I've heard the choir for many years. I love it. It's great. But I want to hear you solo. And I want to hear each and every one of you as an individual. I love your voice. Your voice. Hashmini es koilech is baloshen yochid. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with each and every one of us in his private home, in his private domain. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to test our mitzvah sanosha melamada. You're not in yeshiva. Nobody knows how much you're learning. Nobody knows. Nobody is checking your davening. Nobody except HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with you every moment, every split second, every millisecond. And that is our challenge now. Our challenge is, who are we as individuals? As individuals, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu calls out to each and every one. Hashmi'ini es koilech. Not et kolchem. Et kolech, ki koilech orev. So precious talmidim, young bnei Torah, young aspiring bnei Torah, future talmidei chachamim, future teachers of Klal Yisrael. This is your challenge. Take advantage of every moment. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is putting you to test, and he wants to see who you are as individual bnei Torah. Hashmi'ini es koilech. You've got the time. You're at home. Learn, daven, do chesed. There is so much chesed one could do with a little cell phone. I'm not sure this looks familiar to you. It's a prehistoric relic. This is something I saved from my elder Bubba. So much chesed you could do with a little cell phone or a smartphone, whatever it is. Think about people you haven't seen for a while. Think about friends. Think about, maybe you have some friends that lost parents or grandparents in this epidemic. Just think. Call someone that might be lonely. Call someone that didn't hear from you for a while. Do something good for others. So these are the challenges of our time. Rise to the challenge as individuals, because we're not standing together. We are standing together, but each and every one of us in his own daladamas, in his own private domain. So it was a pleasure to be with you. And it's my schus to teach Torah and to try to inspire. Chassidim say in the name of Rabbi Melech, in a sense, the great name of Melech. To which heart? Which is the first heart that they enter? The closest heart. So which is the closest heart? First and foremost to the same heart from where they came out. So when I speak to others and I try to inspire others, first of all, I am inspired and I am moved. So my bracha to all of you. Take advantage of this time to grow. You have time for introspection, you have time for thought, you have time for reflection. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is checking out each and every one of us as individuals. When each and every one of us stands alone before HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you have nowhere to hide. It is you and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You, your home, your room, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So I hope you all will grow from this period. And Baruch Hashem, we have the possibility and the ability and the means, each of every one of us in his own home, and we could learn together. So take advantage. We should learn, we should teach, we should daven, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu should have Rachmanis, and we should only hear the Seides, Yeshuas, and Achanas. Rabbi Weber, thank you for initiating this, and thank you for giving me the privilege to be with you and to speak to these young, beloved, future Talmidei Chachamim of Klal Yisrael.
Do we have time for some questions?
Yes, we definitely do.
Okay, so these are questions that talmidim submitted to me. The first one has to do with psak halacha in the age of Corona. Certainly in my life, I don't remember a time where more tshuvas were published. The Rosh Hashiva himself just put out a sefer of 176 pages of tshuvas from the last month or two. Has the Rosh Hashiva seen a significant shift in psak halacha? Is what's going on now affecting halacha in ways that didn't happen before, and in some new ways that we need to consider?
Definitely, yes. I am grappling to understand the last 4 words of your question that we need to consider. Definitely new challenges, new questions that we never thought would be relevant. And you mentioned the sefer on Corona that we put out. You know, it's only in a digital form, even though I was moved yesterday. Someone called me that he's willing to print the sefer on his expense. And I said, I thank you greatly, but I don't know how we could sell the sefer. So let's hope this plague will be over because of. So most of the tshuvas won't be that relevant, but I think many collectors will want this sefer as a historical document. I think it'll be an amazing historical document. So I think we as poskim are faced with huge challenges and shaylas that we never dealt with. and I think many chulas as well. You know, many times I teach my talmidim, the talmidim that are really learning in my kollel and other kollelim that are designated to be future posek for Klal Yisrael. And I say, when Chazal say koicha de'itera adif, it's not the same idea as ein gozling gzeira al tzibur elu ken Rav Etzion yachol lamed boy. Rav Etzion yachol lamed boy is somewhat of a b'diavad. Koicha de'itera adif is darko shel Torah. It is the essence of halacha. So Reb Shlomo Zalman used to say, he had a very great sense of humor. So many times he used to say, this is it's a kula she'ein Rav Etzion yachol lamed boy, which is an interesting concept. A kula she'ein Rav Etzion yachol lamed boy. So in the sefer that I wrote, there are various kulas regarding chatzitza and different concepts. But I think the greatest challenge in halacha was in the realm of atzalas nefashos and pikuach nefesh. We never thought that the questions of triage will actually be so relevant. So in Minchas Osher, Shalos Tshuvas Chelek Aleph Chelek Beis, I wrote extensively about priorities in atzalas nefashos, but it was never really so nogeya halacha lamaisa. So in Israel and Eretz Yisrael, it's miraculous. I don't know whether we really have a logical explanation. Yes, we were one of the first in the world to really institute social distancing. But I think looking what's happening in America with tens of thousands of deaths, and in Israel, we had 230 people that passed away. I think it's miraculous. And I tend to believe that it definitely is Eretz Asher Hashem Elokecho Bo Mereis Shonu Adach L'Shonu. So, Baruch Hashem, in Israel, we didn't need to decide who gets the ventilator. But in many hospitals in New York, that was the question. Mi yichye u mi yomas. So that's a line we say in Asana Toikef, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. We're not the ones that really should be deciding who to life and who to death. But in this pandemic, it was a relevant shaila. So I think people like me had quite a challenge in this time, but I don't think it fundamentally affects the way we implement halacha. I mean, when this will be over, we go back to the normal norms and rules.
Okay, a follow-up question, which is similar but slightly different. Take the example of tzedakah in the current environment. Can the definition of tzedakah apply to shopping in a local makolet instead of saving money by going to Rami Levy? Can the definition of tzedakah be expanded to include paying full tuition to yeshiva when really you can't afford it, but you want to give more money? How much can the definition of tzedakah be stretched during the current climate?
Tzedakah and Gemilas Chosodim are two sides of the same coin. Tzedakah is more definitive. Gemilas Chosodim is a broader idea, but they're both the same. So in tzedakah, we have more fixed rules and lists of priorities, who is entitled to receive tzedakah and who is not. Gemilas Chosodim is a broader idea, and Chazal say there's Gemilas Chosodim begufa and Gemilas Chosodim b'memoinai. I definitely think that in a time like this, we need to open our minds and be compassionate, because what we've known all along, who are the rich, who are the poor, who are the givers and who are the takers, now everything is tossed up. Some very affluent people might not have what to eat tomorrow. So as always in time of depressions and time of crisis, many of the mighty and the powerful fall. And there's also opportunities for the ones that know how to take advantage. So I assume that all those little companies that produce face masks are becoming very rich now. And many huge empires will fall. But on the level of the micro, you need to look around in your kehillah, in your small microsystem. I do think, yes, we should try to support the shop owners, those that are struggling in our shchunot, and support, the gananot of our children. So the babysitters aren't working and the ganim are closed. So think about those families that suddenly have lost their basic income. So I do think we need to open our minds and our hearts and change some of our priorities and some of our ways.
A question not related to Corona, but that's halacha l'maisa for this group in two ways. This Friday is Pesach Sheni. Obviously, everybody knows that the halacha of Pesach Sheni relates, at least in the story, to the Tmei Meis, who came to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, Lama nigara. Similarly, groups of talmidim are learning Yesh Nochalim, and everybody knows that the rules of Yerusha were affected by the bnei Slavchad, who said, Lama yigara shem avinu mitoch mishpachto. And the question for the Rosh Yeshiva is, when is it possible for Bnei Torah to stand up and challenge the status quo, the way apparently twice it happened in Chamisha Chumshei Torah? And when is it the proper thing to step back and say, listen, I would love to do this, I would want to do this, but apparently the halacha says otherwise.
Yeah, that's a very interesting comparison, going all the way back to bnei Slavchad and all the way back to the days of Moshe Rabbeinu. But, I assume that Moshe Rabbeinu was challenged many, many times, and not only twice, the two times you were quoted. And at the Torah we learn, Moshe was challenged many, many times. And usually the challenge was adamantly rejected. So I think in our day and age, after the Messiahs, the tradition of halacha has developed through so many ages, we need to find the right balance between encouraging talmidim to think and to challenge and to ask questions. I think it's important to ask questions, but then to humbly, accept the dictates of halacha and of tradition and of minhag. So we need to find the right balance between encouraging our talmidim to think out of the box, and think out of the boxes, and think out of the books. But on the other hand, to instill in them the recognition that halacha reigns supreme. And many times I say that Yiddishkeit rests on two pillars, and that is halacha and minhag. And there are two sugyas in Shas in which Chazal say, and how do we know minhag is binding? And Chazal quote the posek in Mishlei, Shema b'ni musar avicha v'al titesh Torah semecha. So I think bnei Torah have the right to ask questions and to challenge and to provoke. But then, if they ask great talmidei chachamim, and they should accept that what we as from Jews, what defines us and sets us apart from other modern movements in the Jewish world, like the Reform and conservative movements and others, is that we do strictly adhere to the dictates of halacha.
Okay. A question unrelated to Corona, but I think obviously related to Corona, and it's just simply this. How this year is the Rosh Yeshiva preparing for Zman Matan Torah Seinu, and what advice can the Rosh Yeshiva give us for how we can prepare and should prepare for Zman Matan Torah Seinu?
I think my entire talk was part of the preparation to Zman Matan Torah Seinu. So, just an interesting comment. A very famous Aran at the end of Masechet Psochim, when the Aran talks about Sfiras U'Omer. And the Ran says that when Moshe Rabbeinu promised them by Yetzias Mitzrayim, "V'zelechu oiski b'tzeischem mitzrayim tavden esu alakim al har hazeh," and they asked Moshe, "When will that be?" And then the Ran quotes Isa ba'agoda. He quotes a medrash. I don't even recall whether I ever looked up that medrash, but I trust the Ran. And the lashon of the Ran, to the best of my memory, is that bnei Yisrael asked Moshe, "So when will this be?" Each of them counted by himself. So the Sphira, everybody asked a question. It was a question that they asked publicly, but they counted individually. And the Sphira Suwaima is supposed to be an expression of our yearning. That's the famous Sefer Chinuch in Mitzvah Vav. Laharois benafsheinu es hachipetz hagodel sheyesh lanu el hayoim hazeh ke'eved yishav tzel yespor et hayamim mosa yogia hu eisa nichsaf sheyetze bo lechedus. I think more or less I quoted the lesson of the Chinuch. So the count is an individual count, and that is what the Gemara darshans in Menachos Samachei Amid Beis Svartem Lechem Shetei Sfira Lekol Echad V'Yechad. So, the aspiration is a general one, but the count is a personal one. So what I said before about what is unique about this period, the fact that each and every one is on his own. You're on your own. You could waste your time with nothing. You could dedicate your hours to learning and davening and the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that is the way we prepare to Matan Torah, to Kabbalah Torah. You asked me a personal question, how I prepare. I'm embarrassed to say I'm so busy with learning and teaching and writing that I still have to prepare. So we still have some time. So tonight is, 27 days. We still have a few days to prepare.
Okay. Question unrelated to Corona for sure. And that is, Tosus and Brachos Daf Yud Aleph and in Sukkah Daf Gimel talk about the ability of Chazal to uproot a person's Kiyum HaMitzvah D'Oraisa if they didn't do it the way Chazal require it. The obvious case being, having your shulchan in your house and not in your sukkah. Where do Chazal get the right or the power to tell you that you were not Mekayim a Mitzvah D'Oraisa even though you were?
Could I challenge you, Eli? What does the Minchas Osha say about this?
It would be much more productive if the Rosh Yeshiva told people what the Minchas Asher says about this.
Because I dealt with this question in a few different sources in my forum. I don't even remember. I think I regretted when the Sefer on Klolei HaMitzvos came out. And I asked my son-in-law, Bainish, why didn't we put this siman in? I think it's going to be in the next edition. So I spoke about this extensively. And actually, this is, Eli, and maybe some of your talmidim know that I many times quote the Chazon Ish, and when I feel very strongly about a svara, it's hard to convince me to let it go. Even if it doesn't really fit in comfortably with the lashon of the Rishonim, sometimes I'm very stubborn about this. And I quote the Chazon Ish, Mutav lanu litchik b'lashon haRishonim kedei lahamid et hadvarim al tikunam. I don't think Chachamim have the authority to say you don't have a mitzvah d'oraisa. So my interpretation of thesis is different. And my interpretation is that I'll put it this way, and Rabbi Weber, you will explain to the talmidim at greater length. We're talking telegraphic, very short. So one of the basic axioms I argue on many sugyas is we get reward for doing Ratzon Hashem. We get award for serving a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Sometimes a person performs a mitzvah but he deserves nothing for it. And the most striking example is he was Makayim the mitzvah. He's not going to be punished for bittul mitzvah shofar. It was Makayim shofar. After 120 years, he's going to stand next to the clerk sitting by the computer, and he's going to say, Rosh Hashanah 1965, you blow the shofar, and that's why you're going to get 6 hours in Gehenna. And he says, you're crazy. What did you just say? I blew the shofar, that's why I'm getting 6 hours in Gehenna. You mean Gan Eden, right? Looks at his computer at the screen and he says, no, Gehenna. How could that be? He says, because you were Tekei Alashia and you were over on a shavus of a shmoas koil. You can't play a musical instrument. But I blew the shofar. And it will be explained to him, you're not getting punished for bittul mitzvah shofar. You were Mekayim shofar. But you were over on a shavus of a shmoas koil. So will I get schachar? Why do you deserve schachar? You had no intention of doing a mitzvah. Yes, mitzvah saying sichas kavona. So sometimes a person is Makayim a mitzvah, but he gets nothing for it. You get schachar for avodas ukeil, not for the technicality. You are yotzi yedei chayva. In my opinion, if you send a shliach to do a mitzvah, the schachar is entirely for the shliach. You get no schachar. Why do you deserve schachar? You were in bed reading a book when your shliach did bedikas chumis. Why do you think you deserve schachar? The shliach that did the bedikas chumis, it was your house, not his. But he gets the schachar. He's going to get paid for it, not you. You're lying in bed reading a book. Why do you deserve schachar? So schachar mitzvah and oynish avera is all about serving a Kadosh Baruch Hu, making him happy or making him angry. So I think Tosis means to say, if you were Makayim and mitzvah, Shalol Afi Divrei Chazal, don't expect to get Zachar. Your mitzvah means nothing to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Technically, you were Makayim and mitzvah. Technically, you were Makayim and mitzvah. But a Kadosh Baruch Hu expects you to adhere to Chazal. And if you didn't adhere to Chazal, that mitzvah means nothing to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's my understanding of Tosis 7. But a Chazal can't really say it's not a mitzvah. Ve'idach Perusha, I elaborated on this. I think it's in Minchas Osha Psachim and maybe in the New Sefer on Kol Mitzvahs, I'm not sure.
Okay. More time?
One more.
Should I ask you about Emunas Chachamim or pizza?
Could you combine pizza with Emunas Chachamim?
If we ate pizza together, yes.
Eli, you decide.
In the second chelek of the tshuvas of Minchas Asher, the Rosh Hashiva has a number of tshuvas about the bracha on pizza. In the second tshuva, the Rosh Hashiva says it depends how the pizza is eaten. If you eat it walking and arai with your hands on a piece of cardboard, then the bracha is mizonos. And the question that was asked was, isn't that achilas shuk, which we look down upon, and why would we be kovea a bracha based on a pattern of behavior that we think is, if not usher, not the way bnei Torah should be behaving?
Yes, sometimes when I want to convey an idea or a message or a sudden halacha, I use extreme language just to stress a point. A person should definitely not eat a slice of pizza while walking in the street. But I think still there's a difference between sitting around the table and having a bowl of salad, and everybody has his cutlery on a private plate, and he eats pizza together with salad and together with some other things and a coffee, which is the nature of a sudas kva, or so you're not walking on the street eating a pizza, but you sit in the car, you eat a pizza, you have a pizza, you invited your kids and you're sitting in the yard what I meant to convey is, that the entire simon is a big chiddush, because up to the Minchas Osher, everybody defined as achilas arei and achilas kvad, just depending on how much you eat. And I argue it also depends how you eat and what is the nature. So I wrote there are things that define the concept of a suud. And a suud always comes together with tosafot. It's never based on bread alone. So if you invite people over, you sit around the table and there are drinks on the table and there's a bowl of salad or more than one bowl, and you have pizza together with other things. And it has the ofi, the nature of a seuda. But in the modern world, most of the times you eat a pizza just because you don't want to sit down and you don't want it to take time. And the basic argument is, mashabah b'mkom seuda zelo seuda. Sometimes we eat because we want to avoid a seudas kva, and that doesn't become a chilas kva. So that's the basic argument, which I think is a big chiddush. But I don't recall exactly what I wrote. But if I wrote that, eating bishuk, but even oichel bishuk is still needs to make a bracha. It's not proper. It's not midas derech eretz. So I feel very strongly about that tshuva, about the aside I wrote. I thought you want to ask me which pizza I recommend. So
I have a munas chachamim, so just say the word.
Eddie, it's a pleasure to see you and your talmidim, and I wish each and every one of them, HaKadosh Baruch should be with you. You should be great talmidei chachamim. And I spoke to you. I don't remember whether I spoke to this vad, to these boys, but, I say many times, I don't know where life is going to take you. None of us knows where life is going to take you. I hope you all be dedicated Jews, talmidei chachamim, yarei shamayim. You should be successful, each and every one in his own way. I hope that ultimately some of you will choose to be marbitzei Torah, because that is not only the most rewarding job, it's the most rewarding job. And so, many times I say, who's a lucky person? The one that's getting paid for things he loves to do anyway. So if I would win the New York lottery or the lotto, very unlikely that I'll win it because I never buy a ticket. But if HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants someone to win a lottery, he doesn't even need to buy a ticket. So unlikely. But if I would win the lottery and I would get $15 million, I don't think my lifestyle would change at all. What exactly would I stop doing? Would I stop giving shurim? Would I stop running? Would I stop writing? I think my life would basically be the same, I'm afraid, is that the reason HaKadosh Baruch Hu wasn't giving me the $15 million? I don't know. I hope I would be able to do a lot of good things with it, but I would keep on doing the things I'm doing anyway. So a lucky person is the one that loves what he's doing, and he would do the same whether he's getting paid or not. So besides marbitzei Torah, I don't think there are many people in the world that could say, just getting paid for things I would do anyway. And this is the greatest pleasure and the greatest simcha, is to teach Torah and to see our talmidim prosper and grow and develop. So my bracha to all of you is, you should all be successful, and you should all grow up to be lomdei Torah, shomerei mitzvahs, passionate and compassionate Jews, and I hope some of you will ultimately be teachers of Torah. We should have the Torah's.
Thank you so much. Really fantastic. Thank you so much. Everybody, have a great night. Thanks for participating, and thanks again to Rosh Yeshiva.